Hey guys, what's up? It's Eric with Advanced Level Automotive. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another case study. Today, we're looking at this 2007. It's a Volkswagen. I'm not really sure what kind of Volkswagen it is. I'm not too familiar with the Volkswagen models. This doesn't have any emblems or any tags on it, but I think it's either a Jetta or a Rabbit. Again, I'm not really sure, but it does have the 2.5 liter motor. I think it might be a V6. I'm not really sure. Again, don't hate on me. I'm not a Volkswagen guy. I don't know too much about these models. Either way, this car belongs to a friend of mine, and the car has actually been sitting for almost 2 years now. It starts and drives, but the problem is that the speedometer is not reading. Also, the gas gauge is kind of wonky. Sometimes it reads correctly, sometimes it doesn't. Again, I'm not really sure. I haven't driven the car, but that's what they're describing to me. I will say though, is that on the instrument cluster, I mean, it looks like it's Christmas time. All of the lights are lit up. Looks like almost every malfunction indicator lamp is lit. So, you know, there's something definitely going on here. Anyway, they brought it here. They wanted me to check it out. As you guys can hear, the engine is running at the moment because the battery is completely dead. We have to jump start this car every time we want to start it up because the battery holds absolutely no charge. Now, I'm not really sure if that's going to affect our diagnosis, or maybe in fact that may be what's wrong here. Maybe when a battery dies, it loses some type of memory or something like that. I'm not really sure, but we're not going to let that slow us down. We're going to go ahead and continue with our diagnosis, even though we know the car needs a battery. Like I said, it may or may not affect our diagnosis, or it may or may not have anything to do with what's wrong with the car. Anyways, you guys already know how we do it. Let me take you guys inside the car and show you what we got. All right, so let me take you guys inside the car. Again, you can see the engine is running at the moment. You can definitely tell that this car has been sitting for quite some time. We have some buildup of leaves over here, but let me take you inside real quick. Take a look at the instrument cluster, and you can see we have pretty much every light that you can think of illuminated. So you can see our brake light over here flashing. Looks like traction control, ABS, I guess the airbag lights. I'm not really sure what this foot light is over here. We also have this coolant light blinking, which we should probably take a look at. The coolant temp gauge is working at the moment. Looks like the tachometer is, and so is the gas gauge. But what they're telling me is that the speedometer does not work. So we might just take this thing for a test drive to verify that. But before we take this thing anywhere, we need to go under the hood and check to make sure that we have coolant in the tank. All right, so under the hood, here is our coolant tank. We're taking a look at it. Does not look like we have enough fluid in there, or coolant. So let me go ahead and pull this cap off very slowly. This thing has been running for a little bit. Whoop, got a little bit of pressure there. Scared me. Oh, actually, yeah, this thing is full, but it looks like it just has water in there, or maybe it needs a little bit. Let me go ahead and add some to it. All right, guys, so I went ahead and put a little bit of water in there, but honestly, it didn't need any. This thing was pretty much full. It was just really hard to see because there's no coolant in there. It's just straight water. And you know, when it's straight water, it's really difficult to see where the line is. I mean, it doesn't help that this tank is already really difficult to see through anyway, but we're gonna go ahead and put this cap back on there. Again, it didn't really need any. I did top it off a little bit, but let's go ahead and move back inside and see if that coolant light is still on. Yeah, you guys can see our coolant light there is still flashing, so it looks like we may have a deeper issue here. I mean, I'm not sure if it's related to everything else that's going on here. We could go directly to hooking up the scan tool, but I do want to take a moment to take this thing for a quick test drive, just so we can verify whether or not the speedometer is working. All right, guys, so I'm just taking this thing down the street. I'm accelerating, and you guys can see that our speedometer is not moving. I'm probably going at least 20-25 miles an hour there, but again, our speedometer is not moving. So let's get this thing back to the house and let's go ahead and hook up the scan tool. All right, guys, so over here on the toolbox, let me show you what scan tool we're going to be using. This is a new THINKTOOL Pro by THINKCAR. Now, the company did send this to me. They wanted me to check it out. This video is not going to be a review video. I will be doing a full review on this tool. Look for that video on my channel very soon. Right now, we're just going to take this opportunity to use this scan tool and see how well it works with this Volkswagen. Now, I will say I have used this on various other vehicles already, and I can tell you I am amazed by the capabilities of the scan tool. This scan tool to me seems like it was geared more toward being a full-fledged shop scan tool. So if you take a look at this thing, you can buy all sorts of attachments. You can buy, looks like a scope box. You can also buy a printer for this thing. You can even buy a thermal imager, a video scope. I mean, there's a tons of accessories that you can buy for this thing. If you're a professional technician or if you own a shop and you're looking for a scan tool, I would definitely take a look at this thing, because I'll tell you right now, for the price range, I am blown away by the functionality of the scan tool. I mean, these things are just getting better and better and cheaper. I mean, just look at the quality of the tool here. Again, this is not a full review, but I'm just showing you guys how rugged this thing is. Anyway, let's go ahead and go into diagnosis. Well, before we do that, we got to go ahead and connect this to the OBD2 connector. You guys take a look at this dongle here. You might notice that this is familiar. This dongle is actually from the THINKDiag. So it's a Bluetooth dongle that we're going to plug into the OBD2 connector in the car. Then we're going to have Bluetooth connection between the scan tool so we can do our code checks and run whatever tests we need to do. All right, so first things first, I'm going to go ahead and plug in this dongle. It's right under here. You guys take a look. That is our OBD2 port right there. I'm just going to go ahead and stick it in. Okay, so this thing does not want to plug in there. Oh, I see what it is. Oh yeah, take a look at this right here. On this particular car, this plastic here has this kind of indentation, and this tool is too fat to fit in there, so we can't even actually plug this thing in. I mean, that's the first time I've run across this problem here, so it may just be particular to vehicles that have you know, kind of a limited space wherever the OBD2 connector is. Let me see if they give us any kind of adapter or something for this thing. Okay, so looking at the case that it comes with, we have these accessory doors here. Hoping that they have something that we can use, maybe like an extension or something for this Bluetooth dongle here. So let's take a look at what this thing comes with. Oh, okay, nope, those are not gonna work for us. Nope. What is this? Like BMW connectors. Nope. Oh, you know what? I think this might be what we're looking for here. Let's take a look. SP cable. Oh. Yeah, I think this is what we're looking for here. Take a look at that. It looks like we can plug our dongle into this end here. Yep. Then we have this end of the cable here that we can fit right in there. So let's go ahead and move over to the vehicle, and hopefully this thing will fit just fine. All right, so here we have our Bluetooth dongle on our cable end. Let's see if this thing fits in there. Voila, we are good to go. You guys can see this little ring around here lit up. Let's go ahead and move back to the scan tool. All right, so back over to the scan tool. Again, we lucked out with that adapter for the Bluetooth connector. Thank you, THINKCAR, for thinking of that. No pun intended. But let's go ahead and move over to the scan tool. Again, if you guys take a look at the menu here, you can see we have European. And let's go ahead and select Volkswagen right over here, VW. Let's hit OK. Okay, so now that we're in, the first thing I want to do is run a health report. This is going to be an auto scan, which scans all of the modules and shows us all of the codes that are present. So let's go ahead and hit that. Let this thing do a full scan. All right, so as you can see already in the engine control module, we have 4. Transmission control module, we have 7 codes. Let's let this thing finish scanning. All right, so we're done scanning. That took about 1.5 minutes, which this vehicle has over like 56 modules is what it counted up to. So, I mean, it's understandable that it takes a little while for this thing to finish scanning. Plus, we may or may not have some communication issues in which it may have been trying to communicate with a certain module and it just could not communicate with it. So again, let's go ahead and take a look at these codes here. I'm looking at the engine control module first. Again, we have 4 codes here. You can see we have some U codes, U0121, lost communication with the ABS module. And then we have a PO501, vehicle speed sensor A, range performance. So already right off the bat, you can see that these U codes are communication codes. So we might have a problem communicating with the ABS module. Let's go ahead and move over to the transmission module. You can see we have 7 different codes here. I'm not sure what any of these codes really mean. We have an engine control module, brake control module, instrument cluster, diagnosis interface, data bus, drivetrain data bus. Moving to the air conditioning, looks like we have a brake control module code, ECM code. Looking at the central electronics here, we have a bunch of codes for a lot of different things. I mean, we have a ton of different codes, but what I want to do here before we dig too deep into this is I think what I want to try to do is erase all of the codes. And the reason I want to do that is because again, you guys recall that I mentioned this battery is no good. It completely dies out. So, you know, it's possible that whenever we're losing battery voltage, we could be setting off a lot of these codes erroneously. So really what I think I want to do is go ahead and save this so that we can come back and look at it if we need to. But right now, I want to go ahead and clear all of the DTCs so that we can see which ones come back, and those are the ones that we're going to worry about. Okay, so clear fault memory completed. Go ahead and hit OK. Now let's take a look at what we're left over with. Again, the engine control module, now we have 3 codes here, and they're all the same. Lost communication with the ABS module. The air conditioning module, we have a code for the brake control module. The central electronics, we have a code for the drive battery voltage. Airbag, we have a brake control module code. Dashboard, we have a brake control module code. Steering assistance, we have speed signal and steering angle sensor. Also here, central module comfort system, drivetrain data bus. And looking through the rest of these, no more codes. So it definitely looks to me like we have a problem communicating with the ABS control module. Again, we can probably go back out here and go to system selection and try to go directly to the brake control module right here. See if we can communicate. All right, so as you can see, it tried to communicate with the brake control module, was not able to. Here it says communication error with the vehicle ECU. So I think that's really what we need to focus on. We need to focus on a communication issue with the brake control module, because it seems like we can communicate with everything else, but nothing is able to communicate with the brake control module, and we're not able to communicate with it either using the scan tool. Okay guys, so now that we know what we're dealing with, again, the problem we have is that we're not able to communicate with the ABS module, also known as the brake control module. Now there's various different reasons why we could have a communication issue with the particular module. For one, we could have a bad module. It could be as simple as that. Maybe the module's just bad. But you know, we're not here to play a guessing game. This module is probably not cheap for this car. It's a Volkswagen. Nothing's really cheap for this thing. So it really wouldn't make sense to just try to buy one and put it in there. So we need to do some troubleshooting so that we don't make a bad call. Again, we could have something as simple as a blown fuse or a broken wire, which kind of makes sense because, like I said, this car was sitting for almost 2 years. I wouldn't be surprised if we had some rodents get up under the hood, chew some wires up. So that's also a possibility. I mean, maybe even before we go to the wiring diagram, we could just do a quick visual inspection. Let's do that first. Let's go ahead and take a look under the hood and see if we can find anything that's obvious. All right, guys, so unfortunately, our ABS module is in a very difficult spot to get to. I don't even know if I can show it to you guys on camera. It's way down in there. Let's see if I can get a visual of it. I might have to get my flashlight here. It is way back in there up against the firewall. Very difficult spot to get to. I mean, even to do some pinpoint checking, I don't know if you guys can see where the connector's at right there, but that connector is difficult to get to, even to just do some back probing. Now, I will say, a visual check, I don't see any damage to the wiring harness. You guys can see that, the wiring harness running off of the connector there. Again, guys, I know it's a very terrible picture, but if you take a look at this wiring harness, it actually runs up this way, and it comes up through right here, and it looks like it comes down over here and goes across this area right here behind the fender or behind the headlight. And if you guys take a look here, we do have some wiring kind of all jumbled up, but it doesn't look like any of this wiring is attached to our ABS harness over here. This looks like it's all attached to the headlights because you guys can see these are aftermarket headlights that they installed. So looks like they had to rig up some wiring to make it work. Anyway, like I said, at this point, I don't see anything obvious. Let's go ahead and move over to the wiring diagram. All right, guys, so here we have it. We're looking at the wiring diagram for the ABS control module. It's a pretty simple setup. If you guys take a look over here at this rectangular box, this is going to be our ABS control module. Now taking a look at the rest of the diagram, I mean, there really isn't a whole lot going on here. We have the wheel speed sensors over here, all 4 of them. And then up here at the top, we have a couple of other components. If we zoom in, we can take a look at what they are. Over here, we have this ASR ESP switch. And over here, we have the tire pressure monitoring display button. Then if we scroll down, you can see that down here, we have the instrument cluster control module. Now, this instrument cluster control module isn't directly tied to the ABS control module, only through the computer data lines. So we're really not going to worry about this part of the diagram here. Mainly, we're going to focus on this ABS control module, because again, the reason that we are here is because we do not have communication with the ABS control module. So we need to figure out what's going on here. We need to do some basic checks. We need to check for our main powers and grounds, because just like any other computer, like the computer in your house, it needs to be plugged into the wall in order for it to come on. It's essentially the same thing here. We need to make sure that we have all our powers and our grounds in order for this module to wake up. So we're going to start with pin number 1 here, which is this red and white wire. I'm going to highlight it, and if we follow it up, you'll see that it comes from this fuse number 4, which is a 30 amp fuse that's located in fuse panel B. Now this fuse panel B is the fuse panel that's under the hood. And if you look here at the top of this fuse, it says hot at all times. What that means is that this is a direct battery power source. So that means that this is a power whether the key is in the ignition or not. Next up, we're going to take a look at pin number 14, which is this red and yellow wire. I'm going to highlight it, and if you follow it up, you'll see it comes from fuse number 16, which is a 30 amp fuse, also located in fuse panel B. And once again, if you follow this up, you'll see that it says hot at all times. So this is also a direct battery power source. Now, if you take a look at pin number 20, which is this black and violet wire, and if we follow it up here, you'll see that it comes from this fuse number 2, which is a 10 amp fuse located in the fuse panel C. That's going to be the fuse panel that's inside the vehicle. And if you take a look up here at the top, it says hot with power supply relay energized. So what that means is that this is only a power with the key in the ignition and the ignition turned on. So we have 2 main battery power feeds, one on pin number 1, one on pin number 14. And then finally, we have this ignition power on pin number 20. Now, the interesting thing here is if you take a look at this power source that comes from fuse number 2, you'll notice that it splices off here, and it also goes to the brake light switch. And if we highlight this, you'll see that it goes back to the ABS control module at pin number 16. This here is not an ignition power source. This essentially is just how the brake control module knows that you're pressing on the brake light switch. So we're not going to worry about that. And if you take a look up here, we also have this other fuse, fuse number 4, which is a 5 amp fuse on the interior fuse box. And as you guys can see, it powers this switch over here, or both of these switches here. And so, I mean, that may or may not be a fuse that we need to check. I guess while we're in there, we may as well check this because again, these power sources here, you know, while we could go directly to the ABS control module and check these, it's probably easier and quicker to go directly to the fuses to start with. So if we go here and check these fuses and we find that we have good fuses and good power going in and going out, then we know we have to go directly to the module. Next up, if you guys take a look down here at pin number 26, you can see this is our ground. It's a ground G638, which is located behind the right kick panel. So this ground, we do need to test it for integrity to make sure it's got a good connection. Now, those are our main powers and grounds, but the other thing that we want to do while we're in here, if we need to go to this module and do this pinpoint checking, is we're going to want to check the computer data lines as well. That's going to include pin number 21 and pin number 23. These two are directly tied to the CAN bus communication system, which connects all of the modules together on the vehicle. So we want to make sure that we don't have a continuity problem between the wires here and the rest of the circuit. Now, the easiest way to do that is to go ahead and back probe these while we're in here checking the rest of these. And what we want to look for is we want to see that we have our voltage on our CAN high and our CAN low lines. Now, I don't have an exact specification for a voltage, but for most CAN bus communication systems, if you guys didn't already know, usually the system carries between 2 to 3 volts on both the high and the low lines. So that's what I would expect to see here. I would expect to back probe pin 21 and pin 23 and see that we have somewhere between 2 and 3 volts. That's going to let us know that we do have continuity or connection between this point and the rest of the CAN bus communication system. Anyway, that's pretty much it. We're going to go ahead and move over to the vehicle. First things first, we need to check these fuses. We need to make sure that they're all good. And then if we find that our fuses are good, then we need to go directly to the control module and do our pinpoint checking to see what it is we're missing. Hopefully you guys are following along. Let's go ahead and move back to the vehicle. I've located the interior fuse box that's right here. As you guys can see, I have my test light connected to, there's a stud right here on this frame. I'm going to go ahead and take the test light. We're going to be checking fuses number 2 and number 4. This 10 amp fuse right here and this 5 amp fuse right here. So let's go ahead and start with this fuse number 2. You can see I touch one side, we have power. I'm going to touch the other side of the fuse. We have power as well. So that fuse is good. That circuit is powered. Let's go to fuse number 4. Touch that side. You can see we have power there. Switch to the other side of the fuse. As you can see, we have power there. So both of these fuses are good. The circuits are live and they are feeding power. So let's go ahead and move to the fuse box under the hood. Okay, so moving under the hood, here we have our fuse box. We're going to be checking fuse number 16 and fuse number 4. They are both 30 amp fuses. As you can see, I have my test light here and it is connected directly to the battery negative. So we're going to start by testing fuse number 16, which is this one right here. I'm going to go ahead and touch this side of the fuse. I know it's really difficult to see because the sunlight, but that test light is lit. There you go. Can you see that? Okay, now I'm going to check the other side of the fuse. All right, can you guys see that side of the fuse is lit also? So we do have power on both sides of this fuse. That means the fuse is good and the circuit is live. So let's locate fuse number 4, which is going to be this one right here. Again, I'm going to start by touching this side of the fuse here, and hopefully you guys can see that that circuit is live. Our test light is lit. Let me touch the other side. And as you guys can see, our test light is lit also. So once again, both of these fuses are good and both of these circuits are live. So that only leaves us with one other option, and that's to go directly to the ABS control module and back probe the connector. Okay guys, so check this out. I went ahead and I removed the upper cover from the engine. It's right over here on the floor. And now that we have that out of the way, you can see that we actually have a lot of room to gain access to the ABS module. It's right back there. And if you take a look, I already have the connector disconnected. Now, if you look closely at this connector, you can see that these pins are actually numbered, which is really nice because that's going to make it easy for us to do our pinpoint checking. Again, we're going to be checking the main powers and grounds. And if you take a close look at the connector, you can see that our main powers and grounds are these larger terminals on the outside. Again, we have pin number 1, which is a main power, pin number 14, which is a main power, and then our pin number 26 over here, which is the ground. Again, we're also going to be checking pin number 20. That's going to be our ignition power source. And while we're at it, we're also going to check the 2 CAN data bus lines. Now, the other thing I think I'm probably going to do is, rather than try to back probe this, because in order to back probe this, we have to take this connector apart, which isn't too much work. But the nice thing again is that this is numbered here. I think I'm going to go ahead and front probe this connector. Now, I know a lot of you guys are going to say, you know, I'm going to spread open the terminals or whatnot, but I have some really thin probes that will fit right into these terminals without damaging them or spreading them open. And really, I'm not going to be pushing them all the way in. I'm just going to be touching them. That's really all that we need to do. So, you know, I really don't think there's a reason for us to try to back probe this as long as we're careful. I've done this before, so it's really no big deal. All right, guys, so as you can see, I have the power probe connected. And if you look right over here, I have my lead with my little probing tool. Again, really thin. This is not going to damage the terminals in any way. And like I said, I'm barely going to be touching them. So first of all, let's go ahead and start by checking our main powers. We're going to start by checking pin number 1. So I'm going to go ahead and touch the terminal. As you guys can see, we do have full battery voltage there. All right, so just because I know a lot of you guys are going to be questioning the accuracy of my power probe, what I have here is an incandescent test light. I do have it connected to the battery negative. So when I touch a power, this test light should light. What I'm going to do is I'm going to touch the tip of the power probe here because again, it is still connected to pin number 1 on the connector. We're going to see if this test light lights. I'm going to go ahead and touch it. Hopefully that's showing up on camera. Can you guys see that this test light is lit? So we know now for sure that we do have a power and that power feed is not compromised because it is strong enough to light this test light. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and probe pin number 14. And as you guys can see, we have full battery voltage there. And once again, if you guys would like, I can go ahead and touch it with a test light and we can see if the test light lights. Hopefully that's showing up on camera. This test light is lit, so we know that the power is not compromised. Now let's go ahead and check pin number 20, which is our ignition voltage feed. The key is on, so I'm gonna go ahead and touch it. As you guys can see, we do have full battery voltage. Again, I'm gonna go ahead and touch it with a test light. We're gonna see if it lights. And hopefully you guys can see that on the camera, but the test light is lit. So we know that we do have a good power there. Next up, let's check our main ground, which is pin number 26. So I'm gonna go ahead and touch it with the probe. As you guys can see, we do have a good ground. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna touch it with a test light. But what I did was I went ahead and I moved my test light lead from the negative terminal on the battery to the positive terminal on the battery. So that means when our test light touches a ground, it's going to light. So I'm gonna go ahead and touch it. And hopefully you guys can see that. The test light is lit, so we know we do have a good ground. All right, so now that we've checked our main powers and grounds and we know that they're good, next up, we're gonna go ahead and check our CAN data bus lines. Again, pin number 21 and pin number 23, CAN high and CAN low. Like I said, I'm not sure of the exact figure, but I'm expecting to see somewhere between 2 and 3 volts on each of these lines. So I'm gonna go ahead and start by touching pin number 21. And if you take a close look at the meter here, we have 2.3 volts. Hopefully that's showing up on the camera. Next up, let's go ahead and move over to pin 23. Now, if you take a look at that, we have 2.1 volts. Pretty much exactly what I was expecting. So what does that tell us? That tells us that we have good continuity between this connector and the rest of the CAN bus communication system. So at this point, I really don't think there's a question about it. This vehicle needs a new ABS module. I feel pretty comfortable telling the customer that. We've checked everything there is to check on our end. So I'm gonna call him up and see what he wants to do.
A few moments later.
All right, guys, so unfortunately, after having a pretty long conversation with my friend, who is the owner of the vehicle, he's ultimately decided not to fix the car. Now, there's quite a few different reasons why. For one, this ABS control module really is just one issue on top of the laundry list of issues that this car has. Fixing this one problem is not going to fix the entire car. The car does need a lot of work. Again, like I said, it's been sitting for a couple of years now, so you can imagine that it's accumulated a lot of other issues too. So even after fixing this ABS control module, we really don't know what else we're dealing with. Second of all, there's two choices when it comes to replacing the module. For one, we can go with the brand new one, but a brand new unit costs around $1,000 plus the cost of having to do the labor of replacing it and the programming. The cost of that alone is more than he really wants to spend on the car anyway. Now, the second option, of course, would be to buy a used module and put it in the car. But after doing some research, we learned that this is actually a pretty common problem on these cars. And I can guess why. I feel like it has a lot to do with the placement of the module. If you guys didn't notice, that module is located right behind the exhaust manifold. So it's subject to a lot of heat and a lot of vibration. So you could imagine why those modules tend to fail so early. Anyway, putting a used module in there would be kind of a toss up because you know, when you buy a used one, you really don't know if you're getting a good one. And if you do, you don't know how much longer it's going to last. He really does not want to have to be replacing module after module. And then on top of that, you know, we weren't even really sure if we were going to be able to program a used module. I've never done one before. And after doing some research, I couldn't really find any solid information as to whether or not it's possible to code or program a used module into a different vehicle. So with all those problems adding up together, it just didn't make sense for him. At this point, he's really just looking to sell the car and buy something that's maybe a little bit more reliable, because at this point, this one might just be a lost cause. I apologize to you guys if you were looking forward to me putting a module in it and seeing everything work, but I still feel like this video has some good information on how to verify whether or not a module is bad and it needs to be replaced. Anyway, like I always say, thank you for watching the video. I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it informational. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.